Today we're going to learn how to build a slide in on scroll. When you slide down, the images will sort of slide themselves in from the left or from the right, and you can do whatever other animations you like to do. I've actually got this request from a lot of people over the years, and I'm always hesitant to do it because I really don't like the effect all that much. I think it's kind of annoying to have to wait for it. So use this with your discretion. However, that said, I think that you can learn a lot about window events, and then we're also going to talk about debouncing, which is going to make sure that this is not just hammering on scroll. So let's go down to our script tags here. And you'll notice that I've already given you a debounce function here, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But imagine it's not there, it's gone. Okay, now what we want to do is first thing we need to do is select all of the images that we are going to be listening for. And if I open this up in the browser here, you'll see that all the images by default are being hidden. And if you inspect them, you'll see that I've just translated them off screen just a little bit, as well as the opacity here. See, that's really where they are. And then I've translate X them off screen. So you could really do them all the way off screen if you prefer. And then I've scaled them at 95%. So it just gets a little bit of a nice little fade in effect here. So by default, they are going to be hidden. And when they scroll into view, or when they are half scrolled into view, what we're going to do is we're going to apply a class called active, which is right here. And that is going to bring the opacity to 1 and translate the X to 0, putting it where it was and scaling it back up from 95% to 1 or 100%. So we need to select all the images that we're going to be working with here. So we will say const slider images equals document.querySelector all, and we want to select every single image that we want to slide in, and that they all have a class of slide in. Good. Now what we want to do is create a function called check slide that will run every time the person scrolls. So function check slide, and let's just pass ourselves the event and console log the event. And then when the window is scrolled, we are going to run the function check slide. Let's take a look at what we got here. Open up your dev tools. Watch this. Whoa! Look at this. I just logged like hundreds and hundreds of events when I've gone. And this can be a little bit of a performance issue because the amount of times that it's actually running. Here, let's do console.count. How many times are we going to count this event here? Like I scroll from top to bottom and it logged it 50 times in like a second, another 50 times. So if I just like flick my finger, we're going to run that function 50 times. And that is too much. So what we want to do is debounce it, which essentially means that we will only run this function at most however many seconds. So what we've done here is we have this debounce function, and there is a debounce in Lodash. There's functions all over the place. However, this is a framework free tutorial, so I've just grabbed a debounce function off the internet here. And essentially what you do is you pass it a function, and it will run debounce all the time when we scroll, but it will actually only run the function check slide once every 20 milliseconds or once every 100 milliseconds, which is going to give you a little bit more control, and it's not going to give you that hurt in performance. So we're going to wrap that in debounce here. And now when I scroll, look at scrolling from top to bottom, it's only running 7 times versus 50 times when I want to scroll up and down. And of course, you can change that wait from 20 seconds to few or 20 milliseconds if you wanted to do only once every half a second. You wanted to check for something like this. You see, it's very seldomly being called. So that's what debouncing is. And anytime you're doing something on scroll, you probably want to stop and think about. You might think like, oh, it's fine, but later down the road, you might have animation jank and a whole bunch of other stuff that's happening. So make sure that you debounce your scroll functions. Good. Now we're going to do all of our work inside of this check slide here, and we're going to talk about what's going on here. So the first thing that we need to do is loop over every single image and figure out where the image needs to then be shown. So the idea here is that once the image is, I like to call this peaking, because like at this point the image is fully shown. At this point the image is fully hidden. But at about this point, the image is just peeking out about 50%. And that's the point where when the image should be on the page at least 50% of its height, then we want to animate that on in. So we're going to take our slider images. We're going to loop over each one with a for each. That's going to give us a slider image. And for each of those, we're going to have to do a whole bunch of math to decide whether it's on page or not. So we're going to say const slide in at equals. Now, we need to get a couple things here. We need to figure out how far is the page being scrolled down. And that's with something called window.scroll y. So if I were to go here and just console log window.scroll y, open this sucker up. If I just scroll a little bit, window.scroll y. If I just scroll a little bit at this point, you see like I'm 67 pixels scrolled down. I'm 100 pixels scrolled down. I'm 151 pixels scrolled down. So that will tell us how much you are scrolled down, but that tells us how much we are scrolled down at the very top of our browser. We want to know where we are at the very bottom of our window, the viewport that we have here. So what we can do is we take that window.scroll y and then we add the window.inner height. And that's going to give us the pixel level for where you currently are at the bottom of that. And if we console log slide in at, you'll now see 600. See, even at the top of the page, I'm at 663 pixels. And then as I scroll down, it's going to be telling me how far down we are scrolled. Good, but we need to figure out, we don't want to slide in at just at the bottom right here. We want to slide in at halfway through the image here. So we're going to minus the slider image, which is each individual image, the height of that, and that will allow us to slide in the image at the very bottom, but we want to slide it in when it's at the middle. So if we take that and divide it by 2, that will give us the pixel level of when each of the images should be slid in at. So let's take a look here. So now you see each of the images are being a little bit different because it's going to be giving you that information. And the reason why we recalculate this every single time is because if something changes on the page, like if you were to put like a share this button and it bumped your content down, or someone were to resize their window, then we would need to recalculate where the images lie on the page. Okay, good. Now we need to figure out where's the bottom of the image, because we also want to know if we scroll past the image, it should slide itself back out, because we don't just want to scroll from the top down. Sometimes if you scroll back up, we want to have that same animation. So we'll say const image bottom equals slider image. That's each individual image dot offset top. Offset top is going to tell us, take this image, it's going to tell us the top of this image is how far from the top of the actual window here. So it's going to give us a pixel level of how far down it actually is. And then we want to know not where the top of the image is. We want to know where's the bottom of the image. So we just have to add the slider image dot height. So that'll give us the actual height of the image. Okay, good. So we have the slide in at, which is halfway through the image. Maybe we should write some comments here. Halfway through the image. And this is the bottom of the image. Now we need to figure out, first, is the image half shown? And second, if the image is not, if we're not scrolled past it. So let's do the first one here. So const is half shown. These are going to go into an if statement, but I always like to put my variables into variables that make sense for me to read them, rather than just stick everything in an if statement, come back a week later, not sure what's going on. So is half shown is equal to slide in at is greater than the slider image dot offset top. And that will make sure that our slide in at value is greater than the top of where the actual image is. So that's good. And then we will make a is not scrolled past variable. And I realize that's a really long variable, but it will help you in a second when we do our if statements. We say window dot scroll y is less than image bottom. So we want to make sure that we are not scrolled all the way past the image, because if we are, then we need to slide it out again. And that's what this variable is going to check, if that image, if we're not scrolled past it. And then finally we have our if statement. That'll say if is half shown and is not scrolled past. So if it is half shown on the page and we are not scrolled past it, then we are going to take that image and we are going to grab the class list and we are going to add active. Otherwise, else, we are going to simply just remove that, because that means that we've either scrolled past it or have not got to it yet. And then we will I've got a bit of red going on in my editor. It's telling me that variable has not been created because it is slide image. There we go. And make sure you fix that one as well. Looks like we're in good shape. Now, if you're having trouble understanding what these positions are, I understand that scroll and position on the page can be a little bit hard. Just go ahead and console log these values to understand where they are. It sometimes takes a little bit to get what's going on here. But if this has worked, we should be able to add a class of active to each of our items here. So here we go. Oh, we got an error. Go to our console. Cannot read property remove of undefined class list dot remove class list. I'm sure you're screaming at me. There we go. Now you can see as soon as we hit that halfway point for the image, let's scroll all the way out here. About to hit halfway, and there we go. The image will add a class of active, and then as you go away, as soon as you hit this value right here, you can't see it, but as soon as it goes off screen, it's going to move itself on out, and when we scroll back to it, it will show it again. Same with these ones and this one as we scroll on down. So that's really it. There's not a whole lot of code. It is a bit to understand all of these scroll X and scroll Y, especially if you don't really like doing a bunch of math at the same time. But again, what I like to do is stick them into their own variables before you do your if statement and console log these variables to understand exactly what is going on. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and I will see you tomorrow.